Yeah, we're gonna turn it over.
All right. Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jesse, and on behalf of the National Homelessness Law Center and the National Coalition for the Homeless, I'm honored to welcome you to DC for the Housing Not Handcuffs rally. A few quick logistics before we get started. Please stay off the steps. The police have made that easy, so please don't go to the steps. If you need to use the restroom, please go to the Lutheran Church of the Reformation, 2112 East Capitol Street Northeast. It's about a 5-minute walk. There's also a black Suburban that's circling between here and the restroom. It's going to meet folks under that sign. So if you need help getting to the restroom, hang out by the sign. And if you want to head inside and cool down or sit, take a rest, you can also go to the Lutheran Church of the Reformation that is open to us all day. Finally, logistics-wise, we are live streaming this rally. This is historic. And to ensure folks see that we are making history here today, please take out your phone. Please follow the National Homelessness Law Center at homeless_law and share our live stream. There are over 500 people here today. And we want to make sure that people all across the country and all across the world see us here today making history. As we speak, the highest court in America is asking the question, does our Constitution protect everybody, including people who are forced to live outside? Just the fact that that is even a question shows how deeply we have failed our neighbors forced to live outside. But regardless of what happens today, what happens in those walls, we know the truth. Everybody must be protected from cruel and unusual punishment, especially people who do not have a safe place to sleep at night. Before I hand it over to our first speaker, I want to tell you a little bit about Grants Pass. Grants Pass is a small town in Oregon with about 40,000 people. While today's case starts there, it will have profound impacts on the way cities across America respond to the growing homelessness crisis. Today's case could make it easier for cities to throw our unhoused neighbors in jail for the simple and human act of sleeping. Or it can push cities to focus on proven solutions to homelessness like housing. Grants Pass has no housing. There's essentially a 0% vacancy rate. And like all of America, half of renters in Grants Pass struggle to pay rent. Grants Pass also has no shelter. In fact, they just turned down potential funding from the state of Oregon to build needed shelter and housing, even though $200 million was available statewide for this very purpose. There is no housing, and there is no shelter, and that means people sleep outside. And instead of responding to homelessness with things that work, like housing, Grants Pass responded with $295 tickets, and even threw people in jail for wrapping themselves up in a blanket.
Shame.
Can you imagine anything more cruel and unusual than throwing somebody in jail for using a blanket in the middle of the freezing winter? I can't, but that is just what Grants Pass did. Does that seem fair to you? No! Does that seem fair to you? No! I agree, and so do 72% of Americans. And in fact, every court that has heard this case agrees that throwing people in jail when they have no safe place to sleep is cruel and unusual punishment. Let's be clear. Grants Pass's approach to homelessness is extreme. It's dangerous, it's cruel, and it will make homelessness worse. But I know that we are powerful and that we are on the right side of history, and we are not alone. In addition to this rally, local actions are being held this week in LA, Sacramento, San Francisco, Santa Barbara, Denver and Dorado, Colorado, Miami and Orlando, Florida, Louisville and Lexington, Kentucky, Portland, Maine, Missoula, Montana, New York City, Portland, Oregon, Grants Pass, Oregon, Cleveland, Ohio, Philadelphia, Greenville, South Carolina, San Antonio and Austin, Texas, and Seattle, Washington. That's a lot of power, and we're just getting started.
I know that's right.
Today, I know that we will win. I believe that. I'm honored to turn it over to Bobby Watts, CEO of the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council, who will tell us about the health and public health implications of this case.
Good morning. Today is a great day. It is also, as Jesse said, it is a sad day. While it is an honor to stand with you in front of the highest court in the land, coming together as a community committed to justice, It is a tragedy that we must be here at all. The inscription on this building says, "Equal justice under law." But we know that not all laws are just. We know that it is not right to punish people without homes for things outside their control, like living outside a home. Justice doesn't look like that. I come with over 30 years of experience as a public health professional working at the intersection of healthcare and homelessness. Most importantly, I bring the collective experience of the thousands of healthcare providers, administrators, and people with the lived expertise of homelessness who guide and lead the work of the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council. Now, when people think about homelessness, they often don't think about what being without a home does to health. So our message is, homelessness is hazardous to your health. People without homes experience chronic illness and disease at higher rates, and every condition is harder to treat when someone is not in stable housing. How can an unhoused person follow doctor's orders to rest, keep your feet up, keep your medicine refrigerated and take it with 3 meals a day, and get 8 hours of sleep? They can't. The prescription our clinicians want to write is housing. We need housing. We all know that sleep is important, but did you know that the lack of consistent good sleep causes and perpetuates a range of serious health conditions such as high cholesterol, endocrine diseases, cardiovascular diseases, and decreased mental functioning, among others? This is particularly important when we are evaluating this law, because this law makes it inevitable that people will have their sleep interrupted constantly, simply because they have no place to sleep except outdoors. Did you know that sleep deprivation is actually considered a form of torture under international law? Now, I believe that the good citizens of Grants Pass do not want to see unsheltered people in their community suffer. But this law does nothing to solve homelessness and doesn't even make a pretense of trying to help the individual. It only seeks to find them, punish them, and move them from one spot to another. It is guaranteed to make suffering and homelessness worse. The solution to unsheltered homelessness is housing, health care, and supportive services. We know they work. Within 8 years of helping to start the first street medicine program in New York City, we saw a 72% reduction of street homelessness in the Bronx. Most people went into housing where they received health care and supportive services. They got housing, they got treatment, they got better, they stayed there and didn't return to the streets. Yeah, that's worth celebrating. So, if overturned, Johnson versus Grants Pass will make it harder for unhoused people to get the care and the services they need. It will perpetuate health disparities and cause more unhoused people to suffer and die prematurely. Laws like this must not be allowed in our country. I'll say it again. Homelessness is hazardous to your health. And the solution is housing, health care, and supportive services. That's what justice looks like. Thank you.
I want to invite a few folks with those amazing signs to come join us up here so we can show everyone watching at home that we have signs that say housing equals dignity, housing equals justice, housing equals health, housing solves homelessness, housing, not handcuffs.
Housing is a human right.
Thank you, Bobby, for reminding us that homelessness kills, but housing saves lives and ends homelessness. Folks who have been following this case closely know that it was initially called Deborah Blake versus Grants Pass. Deborah lost her job, and since Grants Pass has no shelter and no housing, she lived outside for 10 years. Sadly, like far too many of our neighbors who sleep outside, Deborah died without housing in the richest country in the world before she before she could see the case that she started reach the Supreme Court. I want to honor Deborah's legacy today and the legacy of the thousands of our neighbors who die each year without housing. Please say her name with me. Deborah Blake.
Deborah Blake!
Thank you. Next up, please welcome Caitlin, an organizer and writer with the Transformative Justice Coalition.
I am 31 years old. At 31 years old, I am the National Coalition for the Homeless's former coordinator of public education and the Transformative Justice Coalition's former social media director and executive assistant. I'm a professional poker player making over $190,000 last year and the Voting Rights Alliance's VRA Black History Series author. None of this would have been possible without me obtaining my associate's degree in paralegal studies, but I almost couldn't graduate because 90% of the time I was in college, I was homeless. For the majority of 5 years, family disagreements led me to living on the streets. In 2013, when my adoptive mother kicked me out the last 3 weeks of my second college semester, I went to the Department of Social Services. This being the second time I was unhoused, I thought I knew what to do. Instead, DSS told me to drop out of college because I wouldn't be able to make the 5 p.m. curfew imposed by the only shelter that had a bed available since I went to night school, worked during the day, and took public transportation. It was the last bed left too, so I would have to quit college immediately. I chose to get an education. Graduating with honors in 2016. And immediately working with lawyers such as Barber. I first became homeless in 2010 at 18, when I left my adoptive mother's house rather than constantly arguing. 8 months later, one of the times I was raped resulted in a pregnancy. I made the decision to stay pregnant and have a baby, at the time telling my friends it wasn't a congratulations, because despite working and saving checks, I still couldn't afford a place to live. There was a public park that allowed homeless people to sleep at night, and the police shoot us away early in the morning. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than being raped by trusting to stay in a stranger's house or not being able to work because of a shelter's curfew, remote location, or strict rules. I fondly remember the first night I slept on a bench in this park, 4 months pregnant. I woke up unexpectedly warm and feeling valued because other homeless people decided to selflessly cover me with their blankets since they thought I looked cold. In the city of Grants Pass, I would have been ticketed and arrested because Grants Pass has taken the most extreme posture possible. There is literally nowhere at no time where people living outside can sleep with things like a blanket or pillow. I know deep down you understand that getting out of homelessness isn't easy because you work your whole lives away so you don't have to sleep on the streets like I did. No matter your family situation, your race, your religion, your background, or whether you work or go to college, every single person deserves a safe place to sleep. I want everyone to know that if you have family issues, try to resolve them, because they are solvable just like homelessness is solvable. Currently, my adoptive mother and I have a good relationship, as do me and my daughter, who was born healthy and has never spent a night on the streets. This is my old college notebook. On the one side, it has my criminal evidence and procedure notes from 2014. And on the back cover, it's a sign I made, stating change for a chance to change. Homeless 21-year-old student will work for food and shelter if needed. America the heartless, please don't pass me by. God bless. I stand before you today, a decade later, begging America once again to not pass me by, to instead change the policies that keep people homeless. There are solutions. We are not powerless. If I was made to be powerless by being ticketed or arrested because of my housing status, I never would have had a supportive and safe place to call home, a husband, a degree, and a career. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin, so much for sharing your story and for your leadership. Please welcome next my dear friend and teacher, Amanda Andare, CEO of Funders Together to End Homelessness.
Good morning! I come to you today not just as the CEO of Funders Together to End Homelessness, but as an ordained deacon at Martin Luther King Christian Church in Reston, Virginia. And many of my congregants, my fellow congregants, over 60 years ago were at the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, where they chanted, "Until freedom," right? Until freedom. And in my faith tradition, we often talk about our joys and concerns. Today, I come to you with many concerns, but also joy, because I have hope that our collective concerns about homelessness can be solved when we work together. I have a concern today, folks, because sometimes the people of God, those who want to live out our faith in this world, forget that means radical love and hospitality. Our neighbors without homes need welcoming that sees and honors their full humanity. And I don't know about you, but when I think of a loving God, I don't think about ticketing or arresting folks that have no place to go. I have a concern today, folks, because so many of our communities, the only safe place to sleep, might profess the love of God, but deny our neighbors shelter and housing because who they love, because of what they've done in their past, or because they just need a little bit more time and support to work on the issues that I know many of us would have if we had to sleep outside night after night. Do you have a concern? I have a concern because we know racism and oppression is baked into the fabric of our country, especially our housing systems, and it is the reason our housing and homelessness crisis impacts Black, Indigenous, and people of color disproportionately. And we ask, why do we default to arresting and ticketing folks instead of focusing on housing and humanity? It's because our national response to issues, when it often impacts people that look like me, result in locking people up rather than giving them hope with something so basic of a concern. So I have, with something so basic as a home, and I have a concern about that. But what brings me joy and hope, what gives me hope, friends, is that when we work together and when the rich resources of our country are coupled with love and care, we can focus on the actual solution to homelessness, housing. I have hope because despite our country's long history of racism, we can show the world what is possible when we recognize the problem, when we learn from our past mistakes, when we listen to the people most impacted and start to repair the hard done. Yes. And I have hope because the solutions to homelessness are possible when we welcome our neighbors inside, when we look around our community and say, hey, that building is not being used, that could be someone's home. Yes. I have hope because I know when we say to our community and government leaders that we want resources to focus on housing and giving people stability, we can show what is possible in these United States of America. We can show that joy does come in the morning when we give our community something so basic as an affordable, safe place to live and sleep. And what do we say, like the people who marched on Washington? Until freedom! Until freedom! Because we know freedom comes with housing justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. The Jewish holiday of Passover starts tonight. And at its core, Passover is a holiday about collective redemption and liberation. And I know that I am not free while 600,000 people in this country sleep outside every night. I know that we are not free while cities and states throw people in jail for the act of sleeping. And I know that we're not free as a country until we end and solve homelessness. So as we head into Passover, I'm bringing that with me, that ending homelessness is a moral act. And I know our next speaker, Reverend Dr. William Barber II, agrees. I am very, very honored to introduce Reverend Barber. Please give it up for him. Yeah, we're out of order, so.
Jesse, thank you so much, and thank all of you for your deep moral witness and for your commitment to this truth of fighting for everybody to have a home. You know, the president's in public housing, so we ought to be able to do it for everybody. I want to ask a few of the clergy if they would just come and stand with me. I saw a sister there with collars when I came in. Just for 3 or 4 clergy will stand with me. Reverend Zacharias, where are you? The chair of the D.C. Poor People's Campaign. Yesterday, the New York Times included this story. Inside a warming shelter, Laura Gotowiski detailed how her life had changed since she became homeless 2.5 years ago in Grants Pass, a former timber hub in the foothills of Southern Oregon. Not in the Bronx, but in Southern Oregon, and I want to make a point of that, not to divide, but to unite, because this reality is facing us everywhere. Her husband's death left her without a steady income. She lived in a sedan and then in a tent in sight of the elementary school where her son was once a student. She constantly scrambled to move her belongings to avoid racking up more fines from the police. And she said, "I never expected it to come to this at 55 years of age." When I read the story, I thought about a camp I had visited in North Carolina where a woman had lost her job at a furniture factory, swept the dirt in the homeless camp to welcome us to her home in the woods where black and white and brown and children were living. And Helen said to me, "I may not make it out of here, but please don't forget me and tell people what's really happening." I thought about Leon, whom I met at a camp outside of Aberdeen, Washington. And he asked me why this country could trust him to operate $1 million equipment in Iraq, but couldn't trust him to flip a hamburger right here at home. And why he was homeless, his fiance was homeless, and he watched his brother die homeless. According to the federal government, there are only 670,000 unhoused people in the United States, but I'm here today to say that's a lie. Somebody's been lying and it's gone on far too long. Come up here, Yara. And we can't be silent anymore. It's not only a lie, it's a damn lie. And we ought not be repeating their numbers out here. And I say that as a preacher because the Jesus I follow knew that lies that kill people must be cursed.
Yes.
Repairers of the Breach, the Kairos Center, Liz Theo Harris, and the Poor People's Campaign commissioned a study a few years ago that found there is not a county in this country, in the 21st century, in the wealthiest country in the world, where someone working a full-time job at the current minimum wage can even afford a basic 2-bedroom apartment. Not one county.
Yes, Lord. Yes, that's right.
More than 50 million Americans today earn less than a living wage of $15 an hour. We may not have a good way to count them, but what we know is that there are tens of millions of Americans who can't afford a place to live, who are on the brink of homelessness, who are homeless some part of the year. They may sleep at bus stations, they sleep in their cars, they crash on friends' couches, they double and triple up sometimes. But homelessness is an epidemic in this, the richest nation in the history of the world. And when we don't tell the truth about that, then folks lie about people, and they lie about folk like Sister Laura and Sister Helen and Brother Leon. And there are plenty of lies going around. Christopher Raffo, the same wedge issue warrior who stirred up lies about CRT and DEI, has dug up some data he's using to lie about people like Sister Laura. He says the research shows that most people are unhoused, are either addicted or mentally ill.
That's a lie. That's a lie.
Now, anybody who's ever done research can tell you that's bad social science, because correlation doesn't imply causation. And most of the time, folk are not homeless because they're addicted. They get addicted because they're homeless.
Thank you. Yes, Lord.
Say that.
Yes.
But we don't even need to have an argument about that, because we're not talking about the same group of people. It's not 670,000 people who are impacted by America's crisis of poverty. Today, it's 135 million
Yes, Lord.
people in this country who are poor and or low wealth. It's half of our children. It's over 40% of our adults. Percentage-wise, more people of color are poor and low wealth. But in raw numbers, white people are more. White people are 40 million more white people are poor and low wealth than people of color. 800 people die a day from poverty. 295,000 people a year die from poverty. When 7 people died from vaping, we had congressional hearings and White House coming together. It would take you 600 years of having funerals every day to bury the people that will die just this year from poverty. What they're doing, listen, and I'm almost through, they're trying to isolate a small group of people so they can blame them for policy decisions that are hurting nearly half of all Americans, and in truth are undermining the promise of democracy for us all. People are not addicted and then become homelessness. Our economic system is addicted to greed. Our economic system is addicted to what Julianne Malveaux calls predatory capitalism. Our system is addicted to greed rather than addicted to justice and compassion and a commitment to build affordable housing and to ensure social safety nets and shelters. We are addicted to bailing out banks and corporations and treating corporations like people and people like things. We bail out corporations when they fall because of greed, but we let people fall through the cracks. Human beings stumble into homelessness because of hard times. So this is why we're here today. We are here to tell the truth. If you lie about poor people, then you get away with blaming them for their problem. Poverty and homeless is not some kind of damn glorified vacation. People are dying. And the Constitution says that until we establish justice, we cannot have domestic tranquility. The 8th Amendment, that's the amendment they're debating in the Supreme Court, the 8th Amendment, says that excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted. Laws that make it a crime to be poor are unjust. Laws that would penalize homeless folk for sleeping in public parks is unjust, excessive, and cruel and unusual punishment, and it has no place in America.
That's right.
Instead of arresting the unhoused and fining them for sleeping in streets and parks, we should be investing in affordable housing. We should be investing more in affordable housing than we are investing in war and tax cuts for the greedy. Instead of trying to push poor people to the next town, we need to demand living wages in every town, in every city, in every county. Instead of lying about poor people, we need to recognize them as the least of these, whom God says every nation will be judged by how we treat them. Instead of maintaining the old economy, the needs of people should be a prophetic sign pointing us to a new economy. Unhoused people aren't addicts and drunks. No, they are God's children. They are human beings, like every one of us here. And my faith tradition is clear. It says they are precious in the sight of God. Proverbs 29 says the righteous care about justice, but the wicked have no such concern. Exodus says every 7 years leave something for those who are hurting. and those who are brooding. Jesus said, you will be judged by how you treat the least of these. Proverbs 21 says, whosoever shuts their ears to the cries of the poor will also have God's ears shut toward their cry. Jesus said we must preach good news to the poor, not damnation to the poor. Isaiah 58 says, only when you welcome the homeless and the poor into your home will the nation be repaired and will your prayers be answered. The question is not whether we can save our democracy, but what kind of democracy will we save? So we must not only protest here in D.C., we've got to go back home and mobilize poor and low-wage voters who haven't voted. 33 million of them. Anywhere in this country, if you mobilize 20 to 30% of poor and low-wage voters that have not voted, it can change the elections everywhere. Poor and low-wage people can build and vote for a new America where the vision is for everybody in affordable housing. Everybody has a living wage. Everybody has a job. Everybody has health care. Everybody has good education. Somebody say everybody in. Nobody out. Everybody in. Nobody out. So let us build up housing. Housing that will not tear down the homeless, but will lift up the homeless. Let us respect the humanity of the homeless, rather than embrace the inhumanity of persecuting them. And let us stand, let us fight, let us speak, let us pray, let us vote until the day when all of this place experiences one nation under God with liberty and homes and living wages and health care and education and voting rights and justice for all. It is our time. It is our time. It is our time.
For your glory, Father, for your glory. Hallelujah.
We thank you, Reverend Barber. Thank you.
Hallelujah.
Y'all are stuck.
You better bring somebody on. Hallelujah. For your glory, Father. Thank you, Father.
We just got an update from inside the court. Justice Kagan asked the attorney for Grants Pass, those who believe we can arrest and jail our way out of homelessness. She asked, for a homeless person who has nowhere to go, sleeping in public is like breathing, right? She also told the attorney for Grants Pass that you're on the wrong, that, quote, you're off on the wrong track when thinking about this issue. But speaking of Grants Pass, the town where this case started, it's important to remember that Grants Pass was a sundown town. A town that prevented black people from living there. In Grants Pass, like everywhere in America, past and current racism is deeply baked into our laws, policies, and practices. Right here in Washington, D.C., nearly 95% of people who experience homelessness are black, compared to about 45% of the general population. That is not an accident. This must remind us that homelessness is not caused by broken people, but by broken systems. To solve homelessness, we must work together to repair and transform these systems to build a world where everybody, regardless of their skin color or background, has the housing they need to thrive. But racism is not the only systemic driver of homelessness or poverty. Sadly, Latinx people, indigenous people, queer, trans, and gender non-binary people are all disproportionately impacted by homelessness. And gender-based violence is the same. Gender-based violence leads to homelessness for a staggering number of people each year. To tell us more about this, I am proud to call up Dr. Wendy Mahoney, Interim Director of the National Network to End Domestic Violence.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am Dr. Wendy Mahoney, interim president and CEO for the National Network to End Domestic Violence. I'm here representing our 56 member coalitions against domestic violence. There are nearly 2,000 domestic violence programs and millions of survivors they serve every year. Housing is safety for domestic and sexual violence survivors. The way to end abuse and homelessness is simple. It's housing. And yet housing is one of the most out of reach. It's out of reach. One of those resources for our survivors. Many survivors are forced to flee their homes to escape dangerous, life-threatening violence. Lack of safe, affordable housing options leave many survivors without a choice but to survive outside. Our 18th annual Domestic Violence Counts report states that there were 13,335 unmet requests for services on that one day we provided the survey. And 54% were for housing or shelter. That's more than half of the individuals seeking services on a given day stated that they needed housing. So when survivors are calling to find housing and shelter and they are in danger, there's nowhere to go. We joined 75 survivor advocacy organizations and service organizations on an amicus brief, highlighting how policies like grants passed harm survivors detrimentally. Why should one have to make a choice to continue to be abused or to live outside? In 2024, we have a problem. Running from an abuser, a person likely stalking you, threatening more violence and even death, only to have to survive outside. Continuing to be exposed to additional violence from an abuser in addition to possible threats and vulnerability of sexual assault. As a result, our local community continues to fail people. Now you want to ticket them, fine them, arrest them? Once a survivor has a history of these things, they are screened out of housing. We know that. And that's a systemic issue. Additionally, these policies disproportionately impact Black and brown survivors who face racial discrimination and bias in housing. This is unconscionable in our day and age. Housing is safety for survivors. We call on policymakers to invest in affordable housing and survivor-specific housing programs. These urgent policy solutions are well within our grasp. We need to shift from arresting, fining, and ticketing to policies that help end abuse and end homelessness simultaneously. The policies and the things and the solution is simple. It's housing, it's housing, it's housing, it's housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. As a millennial, I've never known a country without mass homelessness. But America's present homelessness crisis did not began in the 1980s when the federal government slashed funding for housing and safety net programs, and they have kept cutting until this day. But when people see someone living outside, they don't call the White House, they don't call their senators, they call their local elected officials. Sadly, more and more local elected officials are pushing for jails and tickets, not housing and services, but local leaders have immense power to change things for the better. And Alderwoman Alicia Saunier from the 7th Ward of Louisiana is using her power. St. Louis. is using her power to push for a city where everyone has housing. Please give it up for the Alderwoman. I'm so sorry.
Okay. My father is from Louisiana, but I live in St. Louis, Missouri.
All right.
Thank you all. Nearly 10 years ago, the events leading to the Ferguson uprising sparked a fire within me, a commitment to public service. Today, I'm honored to contribute to our city's progress and represent the voices of my community as Alicia Sanye, Alderwoman for the 7th Ward of the City of St. Louis. Every single one of us deserves a safe space to lay our heads at night. But my whole life, I've seen how it can feel like a luxury for someone to be able to afford a stable home. As a local elected, I see on the ground every day in my community how cruel and ineffective policies put cities in a position when we don't have enough shelter capacity and laws on our books that focus in on banishing away, fining, and arresting our unhoused neighbors. Our unhoused neighbors are people too. With dignity, with emotions, with hopes and dreams. And that's why I know that the best way for local elected officials to address homelessness is to provide them with a place to call home. Punishing people for trying to survive outside is not only dehumanizing, it's ineffective. I know that I and people like me remain disproportionately impacted by the issue of homelessness. In St. Louis, our Black residents are 4 times as likely to be unhoused than our white residents. 20% of the children who attend St. Louis public schools, which is estimated to be an 80% Black district, experience housing insecurity. That ain't right. Nationally, we know that majority of unhoused women are searching for safety and from domestic violence. These are cruel facts, but in today's America, the way that we treat our unhoused community is not unusual. St. Louis, like so many other cities, struggles with having appropriate and adequate space for unhoused families. I think of Ms. Hosen, a passionate elder, healthcare worker, who, after becoming a widow, was unable to afford her home and couldn't find shelter space that would accommodate both her and her 14-year-old son. I think of the Echoes, a married couple who came home one day and found all of their belongings strewn across their rental unit with an eviction notice, only to find that there was not enough shelter in our city to accommodate them and keep them together as a family.
That ain't right.
I think of myself, my teenage self, my mom, my little brother. We were forced out of our home when my mom returned home from a concert too late for her husband's taste. He met my mom's late arrival with violence, and the next day while he was at work, my mom, my little brother, and I, 2 men in a truck, packed up everything that we owned and moved. This is cruel, but this is not unusual. As a member of Local Progress, a network of 1,400 local elected officials fighting for racial and economic justice, I know that this is not something specific to St. Louis. From coast to coast and everywhere in between, in small towns and big cities, we're seeing how many of our most vulnerable are affected by homelessness and how $100 tickets and jail time continues to devastate our communities. That's why 156 local elected officials signed on to support Gloria Johnson and tell SCOTUS to support solutions that provide people with needed housing. So what is the solution? Providing people with permanent, stable housing that meets their needs and services like healthcare, case management, mental health support, and income coaching. That's why in St. Louis, I introduced an unhoused Bill of Rights, and we are working to make it easier for our city to build needed shelters to bring people experiencing homelessness into an eventual place that they can call home for the long term. And we got so close during our last legislative session with the split vote that just came 1 vote shy. And this isn't just in St. Louis. In Houston, Philadelphia, Denver, Oklahoma City, New York City, we have seen that the solution to homelessness is to provide the full spectrum of housing. The places spearheading these policies are seeing unhoused residents find permanent, stable housing at higher rates than others, and capitalism should like this, at much lower cost than other cities. It is cheaper to house people than to incarcerate them. I want to live in a United States that sees the humanity in each of us, that respects our value as a person who deserves a safe space to sleep. I want to build a country that lifts all of us up together, especially when we are at our most vulnerable. We are the ones we've been waiting for, and it's our policies, our laws, and our practices that show what our values and our character truly are. Thank you.
It's all you.
Brothers and sisters, we want to do one thing in the middle of this. Let's give it up for Jesse, too, and all of the organizers. Quickly say, housing is a human right. It shouldn't be Democrat or Republican, just a human. And let's make sure we don't pit ourselves against each other. When we do the stats, tell all of them. Homelessness among black people, homelessness among white people, homeless among Asian, homeless among indigenous, homeless among Asian, Latino, because what they want to do is split us up and marginalize folk and make issues. Somebody just told me to say low wages and low income. Don't just say one or the other, right? You see what I'm saying? Make sure we use the language that doesn't trap us in their language and their numbers, which means everybody in, nobody out. So on June 29th, we're calling for a mass poor people, low-wage workers assembly, moral march on Washington and to the polls on Pennsylvania and 3rd at 10 o'clock. Want to ask all of you to tell somebody and join it. We're inviting impacted people, poor and low wage, low income, religious leaders, advocates. And one of the things that we're doing, lastly, is this is the 60th year of Freedom Summer. Did you know that in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Michigan, in the last election, the total margin of victory was only 270,000 votes? The number of poor, low income, and low wage voters that didn't vote, they were already registered, was 4 million. Which means if just 5% were to move, we determine, poor low-wage folk now make up 30% of the electorate and 40% in battleground states. Nobody's talking about that because they don't want us to know that God has fixed it so that the stones that the builders rejected now have power. So Yara's gonna sing a song to remind, we want everybody to join in. It's called Somebody, which one you gonna do? I'm gonna let her come. But you gotta have a movement that sings too.
I want you to repeat after me. Somebody's hurting our people. And it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Simple call and response. You'll get it as we sing it. I want you to raise your voices very loud. Somebody's hurting our people, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. I tell you, it's gone on far too long. Oh, somebody's hurting our people, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Did you hear? Somebody's hurting our children, and it's gone on. Yes, it's gone on. I tell you, it's gone on. and it's gone on. And we won't be silent anymore. Did you hear? Somebody's hurting our people, and it's gone on. Yes, it's gone on. I tell you, it's gone on. Yeah, somebody's hurting our people, and it's gone on. And we won't be silent anymore. I see a sign over there. Yeah, somebody made sleeping a crime, y'all, and it's gone on. Everybody. Yes, it's gone on. I tell you, it's gone on. Oh, somebody made sleeping a crime, y'all, and it's gone on. And we won't be silent anymore. Here's the last one. Oh, if we've been just a little too quiet, you know it's gone on.
Far too long.
Yes, it's gone on.
Far too long.
I tell you, it's gone on. Oh, if we've been just a little too quiet, you know it's gone on.
Far too long.
And we
Be silent anymore.
and we won't be silent. And we won't be silent anymore. One more time. And we won't be silent anymore.
I go right. Please. Can he go forward, please? Give him time. Give him time. Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Thank you.
Donald, I'm going to call you up.
Thank you. To the corner.
Our next speaker, Donald Whitehead, needs no introduction. Donald fiercely leads the National Coalition for the Homeless and is a world-renowned expert on homelessness. Donald always reminds us that if we are not centering the voices of people who have been homeless, we are not actually doing the work of justice. Donald, thank you for your leadership. It's an honor to pass the mic over to you.
Thank you so much, Jesse, and I want to thank all of you. And before I get started with my remarks, I want to do something. I want them to hear us inside. Yes. And so what I want you to do is we thank all of you for being here and give yourselves a rousing round of applause so they can hear you inside. So again, I want to thank you all for being here today, and I also want to thank the hundreds of people across the country that are doing protests in over 30 events across this country. I want to thank all of the groups that came together. This is historic. We sometimes operate in silos in the national advocacy movement, but we're not doing that anymore. We all came together today to make sure that people around this country who are experiencing homelessness know that we have their back. They know that we care. And you show those in power in this country that arresting, fining, and ticketing our neighbors does not make homelessness better. It is a costly way to make homeless people invisible and homelessness worse. We should have realized a long time ago that we can't arrest our way out of issues. Throughout history, we have encountered forks in the road. This is one of those moments. And we can choose one of two paths. One that says we're a country that fulfills our promises, like those in the Declaration of Independence or on the Statue of Liberty. Give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send us these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. Or we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among those are the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Sadly, we are compelled to continue a path towards constantly breaking those promises, subjecting our neighbors, our veterans, our seniors, and our children to harsh penalties for a lifestyle that they do not choose. People do not choose to be homeless. They are forced into homelessness by a safety net riddled with holes. Homelessness is not the result of a moral deficiency by people experiencing homelessness. Homelessness is the result of broken promises following deinstitutionalization, the failed strategies of mass incarceration, and redlining among a long list of broken public policies. Because of these failures, people experiencing homelessness are not met with open arms or compassion. They are confronted with handcuffs, fines, and violence. It is impossible to pursue happiness on the ground in McPherson Square. It is impossible to pursue happiness in the backseat of a Buick in Baltimore, Maryland. Communities are denying the fundamental rights to sleep, stand, or sit. We can do better. Housing should be a human right. Jobs should pay livable wages. We should have health care for all. Our challenge is that our country does not have the political will to pursue those things. And so we must use the power that we have. And that is the power to organize. Power concedes nothing without protest. It never has, and it never will. So let's keep protesting. Let's bring America home, and bring America home now. In this country, we've gone to a place where we believe that we can end homelessness, but we accept the conditions as they are here today. But Martin Luther King said, let's cast poverty into the junk heaps of history and have everyone living in a home. In America, that was Martin Luther King. We shouldn't accept it then. We didn't accept it then, and we shouldn't accept it now. Housing is a human right. Say that one more time. Housing is a human right. Every citizen deserves the right to sleep in the richest country in the history of the world. And as I end today, again, I want them to hear you. Housing, not handcuffs. Housing, not handcuffs. Housing, not handcuffs. America, do what's right.
Thank you, Donald. A little update from inside. Justice Sotomayor, where do we put unhoused people when every city, village, town lacks compassion? Where are they supposed to sleep? The response from the Grants Pass lawyer: this is a difficult policy question. Bullshit. Housing ends homelessness. It is not difficult. It is not complicated. We've been talking about national things, national organizations, national movements, but right here in DC, there's a homelessness crisis. And I'm proud to call up Dana White from Miriam's Kitchen, who's going to ground us in the fact that there are far too many people sleeping outside in Washington, D.C. A lot of orders being Lindsay, let's do a chant real quick. We're gonna do a chant as we get back to order. Yeah. Yeah, just do it.
All right. So, this one's a little tricky. Can y'all hear all right? Yes. All right. Here's how we do it. We go, 1, we want housing. 2, a little bit louder. 3, I still can't hear you. Hold not handcuffs. 1, we want housing.
2,
a little bit louder. 3, I still can't hear you. Hold not handcuffs. 1, we want your housing. 2, a little bit louder. 3, I still can't hear you. Hold not handcuffs. 1, we want housing. 2, a little bit louder. 3, I still can't hear you. Hold not handcuffs. 1, we want housing. 2, a little bit louder. 3, I still can't hear you. Hold not handcuffs.
After the next chant, I'll put you in. Yeah.
Clarence Thomas must go.
Good morning. And to those of you who travel to be here and stand on the right side of history, welcome to DC. At Miriam's Kitchen, we not only serve thousands of meals weekly, but we operate extensive outreach to our unhoused neighbors right here in the district, and we provide support to around 300 residents in permanent supportive housing. We also convened the Way Home campaign, a coalition of 110 organizations and thousands of individuals who know that we can end chronic homelessness here in the district and nationwide with the proven and innovative housing solutions. In the coming weeks, though, DC government and the National Park Service plan to evict encampments in and around Ward 2. This will... Absolutely, shame. That ain't right. This will impact around 70 people, but here's the thing. On any given night here in DC, our local homelessness response system cannot guarantee 70 available shelter beds. Here in DC, like in Grants Pass, there's underinvestment not only in truly affordable housing, but the programs that both prevent and resolve homelessness, such as rapid rehousing, emergency rental assistance, permanent supportive housing, low barrier and safe emergency shelter. There's also administrative failure within local agencies to match people to the resources that they qualify for. Last year, of the 90 people who died on the streets here in DC, over half of them had vouchers but were not matched to housing. We know that fines and arrests and encampment evictions, arresting people for their survival, does not resolve homelessness. Housing does. In DC and nationwide, due to structural racism, homophobia, transphobia, Black and LGBTQ people are more likely to be rent burdened and to experience homelessness. These communities, my communities, are more likely to be impacted by both the underinvestment that I mentioned earlier, but also a carceral response to poverty. Homelessness is and has always been a matter of political will, not scarcity of resources, but the immoral allocation of resources. Not a lack of evidence of what works, but an over-reliance on police in the absence of moral leadership. This case is about housing justice, yes, but it's also about racial justice. It's about LGBTQ equality. It's about disrupting a poverty to prison cycle. It's about whether we want to be a nation where every human being, regardless of their background, regardless of their productivity under capitalism, or their lack of resources, can survive. We're here today to tell the court to affirm the human dignity of our neighbors. We're here today to say with absolute conviction that housing is a human right. We're here today to demand in front of the nation and the world that in DC and Grants Pass, from our largest cities to our smallest towns, that housing solutions be prioritized over fines and arrests. That none of our neighbors be treated as disposable. That when we are in need, none of us is treated as disposable. I thank you for your solidarity. Welcome to DC. I believe that we'll win.
Thank you, Dana. Your remarks reminded me when the President Biden and Mayor Bowser evicted nearly 50 people from McPherson Square last year. The 2 people who were arrested were homeless veterans. And just inside, the city of Grants Pass made the argument that the National Park Service evicted people from McPherson Square. Why can't we do it?
That ain't right!
To talk more about the impact the jails and fines have on homeless veterans, like the 2 who were arrested by the National Park Service, please welcome Catherine, CEO of the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Catherine from the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans. Our organization partnered with the UCLA Veterans Law Clinic and 45 organizations on a brief to help this court and this country understand that you cannot arrest and or find your way out of homelessness.
Right.
It's impossible. And there are a few universal truths that veterans and civilians grapple with across this country. Housing is too expensive.
Yes, it is.
We know minimum wages haven't risen meaningfully across the nation. We know that so many people face challenges accessing healthcare services and other supports. And we know that persistent historical, racial, and other types of discrimination impact housing outcomes. While veteran homelessness decreased dramatically in the last decade due to local partnerships, increasing federal focus, and investments in proven solutions like housing and services, unsheltered veteran homelessness rose between 2022 and 2023. There are over 35,000 homeless veterans in this country on any night. And as a subset of the American population, the struggles of everyday Americans are familiar yet amplified in unique ways. Veteran homelessness has in fact decreased by over 50% since 2010, showing us that solutions for homelessness exist, not just for veterans, but for everyone.
Right.
Here's what works. We've seen increased federal investment and coordination. We've seen continued focus on housing-oriented solutions. We've seen enhanced employment services for homeless veterans. We've seen a lot of work done around inequities, and we've seen many other data-driven interventions result in progress in community after community across the country. You know what doesn't work? Fining and ticketing people who are outside, forcing them to move, and banishing them from their community. The court must understand that their ruling could have dire consequences for unsheltered veterans and for everyone. It's absurd to think that arresting, fining, and jailing anyone experiencing homelessness will do anything other than harm people for being impoverished. And it just makes it harder for them to get back on their feet. Like my peers today, we urge everyone to consider the needs of people who have to sleep outside and the overwhelming burden that ticketing and fines places on them. We hope that the justices will rule in a way that reflects the humanity of all Americans, no matter where they lay their rest. And we thank all of you for being here to support all Americans.
Thank you. Clarence Thomas, let's go! You are correct, madam.
I know it's a beautiful day here in DC, but we have to remember that in Grants Pass, just like their extreme homelessness policies, the weather's extreme. On Wednesday, it was 28 degrees. Yet under their extreme ordinances, Grants Pass locked people up and gave them tickets for wrapping themselves up in a blanket in the middle of a sub-zero winter. The cruelty is the point. I'm pleased to call up Dr. Rajni Shankar Brown, Chair of the Board of the National Coalition for the Homeless and Distinguished Chair of Social Justice Education at Stenson University, to help us connect the lines between homelessness, climate change, and justice.
Namaste. Before we start, I want to do a chant. I'll say housing, you say justice. Housing!
Justice!
Housing!
Justice!
I say housing, you say justice. Housing!
Justice!
Housing!
Justice!
That's right. Together, we gather in moral solidarity. We gather today, look around in love, because everyone deserves safe, affordable, decent, sustainable housing. To have millions of individuals and families living in poverty, experiencing homelessness in the wealthiest nation in the world is unacceptable. But here's the thing. We are the people, and we, the people, have the power to change this narrative. Thank you for showing up today. This is a movement about beloved community and a movement about love and justice, and it's going to take all of us. Yes. It is our collective responsibility to address the hardships and challenges of housing justice. We also need to recognize that the state of homelessness, a humanitarian crisis, is deeply intertwined with our environment. Today, as we gather, it is April 22nd, also Earth Day. Along with singing deep gratitude to Mother Earth, Ashanti Om, to our indigenous lands that we are on, it is also imperative that we recognize the deep connections between environment, housing, racial equity, and human life. Over the past year, we have seen an alarming escalation of extreme weather conditions. Historic highs with rising heat indexes, increased wildfires, dramatic sea level rise, intense weather storms with sub-freezing temperatures, devastating hurricanes, more rainfall, and flooding. And the toll on human life, our brothers and sisters, our children, our youth, our fellow human beings experiencing homelessness, the toll has been and continues to be grave. When I say housing, you say justice, housing, justice, housing, justice. These environmental catastrophes exacerbate the plight of millions of individuals who are unsheltered, quite literally having to weather the weather. That ain't right. That ain't right. People unsheltered trying to survive. Homelessness in our nation reflects decades of failed housing policies, soaring rents, stagnant wages, intensifying climate impacts. It also includes diverse stories. It includes our veterans who have sacrificed to serve for our nation. It includes our grandmothers and grandfathers, adults above the age of 65. It includes our babies, our children, our youth, our future. And homelessness and environmental degradation disproportionately impacts Indigenous, Black, and brown communities. But it impacts all of us. And it is up to us to work together to disrupt this unacceptable and criminal narrative. We must protect human life and our planet. Homelessness does not call for handcuffs. It calls for housing. Homelessness does not call for handcuffs, but calls for radical empathy. It calls for public health. It calls for a true democracy that honors our shared humanity. It calls for elected officials and those in leadership positions to do what is right. Homelessness calls on us, all of us, to build a coalition of coalitions focused on compassionate, real, sustainable solutions.
Yes.
Billionaire-backed organizations are actively pushing policies that are making things worse. The fact that billionaires are getting richer while people living in poverty struggle for basic rights, housing, and food compels us to question the morality of our systems and to collectively demand social change. Arresting and ticketing people who are simply trying to survive is not logical or humane. It is also counterproductive and far more expensive than investing in housing infrastructure. This is about humanity, it's about dignity, it's about all of us.
Yeah.
America, the beautiful. Be beautiful. Be just. Invest in housing and make sure that people have opportunities to live. As we gather today, our rally is an urgent call to action, a vision for a more loving and just society where everyone has access to housing and the comfort of a place called home. We owe it to our children and to each other, and we must keep marching until all of us are home. When I say housing, you say justice. Housing! Justice! Housing! Justice! Namaste.
Another quick update from inside before our next speaker. Neil Gorsuch. You end up in jail for 30 days, then you get out. You're not going to be better off than you were before in finding a bed. He's right. Homelessness doesn't solve housing doesn't work. Jails and fines don't work. Housing solves homelessness.
Housing works.
I am proud to turn it over to Anna Oliva, the Executive Director of the National Alliance to End Homelessness.
Good morning, everybody. Come on, you can do better than that. Good morning, everybody. Thank you. Again, my name is Ann Oliva. I am the CEO of the National Alliance to End Homelessness. And I stand here looking out at all of this, and my heart is full. I'm not a faith leader. I'm not an elected official. I am a human being working to end the injustice of homelessness. And I want to thank everybody who's here, who's standing together today to bring attention to the case that will determine how other human beings like me, like you, like folks who are standing way out there, other human beings, including our nation's veterans, families with children, our nation's elders, people with disabilities. This case will determine how they can be treated under the law. And I want to spend my time at this podium today discussing actual solutions to homelessness, because we for sure know that ticketing, fining, and arresting people for sleeping outside when they have nowhere else to go not only doesn't end their homelessness, it makes it worse. We all know it's common sense. It makes it worse. Nationwide, we have a shortage of about 7.3 million units of available and affordable housing for people with the lowest incomes. And as a result, there are more than 250,000 people living unsheltered on a given night across America. Homeless systems nationwide are succeeding in housing people. They are, but can't keep up as more and more people enter homelessness for the first time. The national data show that in 2022, on average, about 17,000 people became homeless for the first time each and every week in 2022. 17,000 people. These problems cannot be solved by fines, tickets, or arrests. Our nation's leaders need to fund the long-term solutions that we know work: safe and affordable housing and wraparound services. And in the meantime, they must also support strategies like outreach, like behavioral health and health services, and housing-focused shelter that keep people as safe and healthy as possible. We know this works because, as my good friend and colleague Catherine said, because it worked for veterans whose homelessness numbers were cut in half by providing affordable housing with the services that veterans wanted and needed. As elected officials in Grants Pass and elsewhere confront these challenges, they are uniquely empowered. Instead of criminalizing people and fining them and arresting them, they are uniquely empowered to use their influence to advocate for federal, state, and local leaders to step up with the resources that could prevent and end homelessness in America. And those resources include the following: increasing housing affordability through major and sustained investments in our nation's rental assistance programs. Right now, only 1 of every 4 households that is eligible for federal rental assistance can receive it. It also includes investing in the production and preservation of housing affordable to those with the lowest incomes. It includes continued and robust investment in our nation's homelessness assistance programs, and it includes making it easier for people to access the health and behavioral health services they need. These things happened just a few years ago during the pandemic, at least some of them did, because government decided to make it happen. It's a choice. Our leaders need to support what's proven to work rather than revert to failed policies of the past. Safe and affordable housing is a win for everyone because it makes us stronger, and communities will support leaders who fight for it. Again, my heart is full looking out at this crowd. I thank you all for being here today. I hope your hearts are full too.
Thank you, Anne. Helen Cruz grew up in Grants Pass, Oregon. She cleaned houses that she could not afford to live in. Helen lost her housing in 2016, and since Grants Pass has no housing and has no shelter, she slept outside. How did Grants Pass respond? They gave her over $5,000 in tickets. That pushed Helen further into poverty, but Helen is a fighter. Today, she serves the community of Grants Pass at her local church, even though she works a busy schedule. Today, Helen has a safe place to live. I am deeply honored to welcome Helen Cruz to the stage. Please listen to her story and to her wisdom.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Helen Cruz, and I have been a resident of Grants Pass forever. I've been homeless off and on for many years in that town. Deborah Blake was a very dear friend of mine, and she is one of my inspirations for being here today. She has put some drive in me, and I want to make sure that everybody knows that, you know, she was somebody who was a force to be reckoned with. And I didn't want to see what she started go to the wayside. So that's the reason I'm here. In all of my years of being homeless, the only thing that I ever wanted was to be heard. And thankfully for the people and the amazing people that are here today, I get that opportunity. Grants Pass is a really small community with a very, very big homeless problem. City council and law enforcement make it a complete nightmare to be homeless. They make their own ordinances, fines, and fees for the homeless. They make it impossible for anyone to ever get ahead. The fines they impose essentially make people criminals because they have no place to go. Nobody should have to be subject to intimidation, bullying, and live in fear of being punished because they don't have a home. Let us not forget that homeless individuals are citizens just as much as those fortunate enough to have a safe, secure living place. We should try harder to protect the most people who are homeless and have no home. Kindness, compassion, and empathy go a long way, and it doesn't cost a dime. Housing instability for someone like me and all others out there can mean the difference between life and death. I have lost so many friends out there because they were too hot or they were too cold.
That ain't right.
And it's not okay. It is inhumane. City politics and political red tape needs to stop. Affordable housing is the only solution for the crisis that has plagued our nation. And I am very proud and honored to be here today, to be able to be a voice for those who don't have the courage to stand up for themselves and speak for themselves because they are too afraid and too intimidated of the repercussions that they might face. And they are human too. We all breathe, bleed, and we are human as well. We may not have that white picket fence. We may not have those fine clothes that everybody else has. But in the long run, when the day is over, we are still human. And it is not okay to be put in a category that puts us less than anybody else. We deserve respect, dignity, just as everybody else does. And I do believe that there is a way to bridge this gap. And the sooner we do, the better off everybody's going to be. You know, people need to stop sticking their head in the sand and realize that everybody out here is human. And not only that, Jesus was homeless. You know, so it's like, you know, we're supposed to be kind to our others, our fellow man. And the sooner we start doing that, the sooner there's going to be a difference. And housing is the only solution. That is the only solution that is going to make it any kind of difference. I came all the way from Grants Pass, Oregon. First time I've ever been on a plane. Okay. But you know what? I am very proud and very honored, and I'm very humbled to have been a part of this. Because I do believe somewhere it's going to make a difference. Thank you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Helen. We're going to do a quick chant and then dive back into our lineup of amazing speakers.
Y'all, this one comes, all these chants we're doing come from the streets of Nashville that we've been doing for over a decade, and we just change them up a little bit for here. So we've got one that we want to teach you, and it goes like this. Supreme Court of the United States, SCOTUS, right? SCOTUS, now's the time. Homelessness is not a crime. SCOTUS, now's the time. Homelessness is not a crime. SCOTUS, now's the time. Homelessness is not a crime. SCOTUS, now's the time. Homelessness, let them hear it. SCOTUS, now's the time. Homelessness is not a crime. SCOTUS, now's the time. Homelessness is not a crime. One more Sherman. When housing is under attack, what do we do? When housing is under attack, what do we do? When homelessness is under attack, what do we do? When homelessness is under attack, what do we do?
Woo! Thank you. There's a myth that keeps coming up around this case. The myth is that people choose to live outside, to live without housing, to experience homelessness. In my decade of work to solve homelessness, I've never met anyone who said, when I was little, I dreamed of being homeless when I grew up. Homelessness is a choice. It is a choice made by our elected officials every day, when they fail to fund the solutions that end homelessness. Solving homelessness is a choice, and to talk more about what choices our elected officials should and must make to actually solve homelessness, I'm proud to turn it over to Diane Yentel of the National Low Income Housing Coalition. You got it. I'm going to take this down now.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here today with all of you to stand for the rights of unhoused people and to say housing is a human right. We all need a safe, decent place to live. And homelessness is caused not by individual fault, but by systemic failures to make homes affordable to all. Nationally, there is a shortage of over 7 million homes affordable and available to renters with the lowest incomes. In Grants Pass, for every 10 of the lowest income renters, there are just 2 apartments affordable and available to them. Renters in Grants Pass and in every community across the country are struggling with high rents and wages that can't keep up. But despite this crisis, Congress, right across the street from us, refuses to fix a broken housing system where 75% of people in need of housing assistance receive nothing. And as a result, far too many people face eviction and become homeless. It doesn't have to be this way. Homelessness is solvable when policymakers act, not to blame and arrest and make things worse for people who are homeless, as too many policymakers do, not to threaten to cut or eliminate proven solutions, as some Republicans have done. No, homelessness is solvable when we take action to make homes affordable for everyone, starting with the lowest income people. During the pandemic, Congress responded to unprecedented housing need and to our calls to action with historic protections and resources. It was the biggest federal intervention to keep low-income people housed in history, and it worked. Those actions cut evictions in half, kept millions of families stably housed, moved many unhoused people to safety. During the pandemic, we proved that when we have the resolve, we can prevent and end homelessness. But then, Congress let all those protections, all those resources expire. Rents skyrocketed, inflation soared, and as rents and costs increased, so did homelessness. And this was not only tragically predictable, it was entirely preventable. If Congress instead had enacted the Build Back Better Act with its $150 billion in funding for affordable housing, we could have ended all unsheltered homelessness in Grants Pass and nationwide. But Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema and every single Senate Republican killed that bill. And with it, that opportunity to end homelessness. So let's be clear. We will end homelessness when we build the political will to fully fund solutions. Because homelessness is a choice, not of the people who experience it, but of the policymakers who create and sustain and worsen it. And we can and we must demand leaders who choose otherwise. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Diane. Up next, please welcome Marcella Middleton, CEO of Away Home America.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am so nervous because I'm not just standing here for me, but so many young people across the nation who are experiencing homelessness. I I think when you hear CEO, you feel like that's so important, right? But I think the important part about my role is that I have lived experience, and I'm the first CEO at our organization to have lived experience. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's so funny because I want to talk my shit up here. I just find it crazy that we even have to be here to ask for help. That's crazy. I mean, to ask for housing, like the most basic need that all of us need. And I thought it was just so, like, it was such a word when the Reverend Barber said that the president has public housing. That's a word. How can he have that, but we're not even trying to make sure our young people and just all humans have that? That doesn't make any sense. It's mind-blowing. I was with my young people this weekend, and I, been thinking about coming here, and I'm like, I don't want to go back home to them and tell them that, because about 90% of them come out of foster care and end up homeless. I don't want to go home and tell them that they have to, think about their future being fined and jailed just because they don't have anywhere to sleep, because they don't have resources. That's crazy. Yes. It ain't right. It ain't right. None of this is right. And I'm just happy to be standing here with you all to really shut down, the thought that we won't give people homes, like that housing isn't a human right. Like, who would think that? I'm just appalled. I'm still appalled. Like, transitioning through the foster care system into homelessness, I did that myself. And so to stand here, I'm hoping that I'm a beacon of hope to young people. And I'm hoping that the decision, thank you so much. I'm hoping that the decision made today is the one that's right for everybody. And especially that I can go home and tell my young people, y'all, there's hope and it's gonna be okay. Housing is a human right. Housing, not handcuffs. It seems so simple. It's so simple. And it's a choice, right? And y'all been back here talking, I love these folks. That's right. That's right. We're going to give it to them. Somebody had a poster that I loved that was like, jailing someone is 65 grand, right? But it's 13 of it that, right. Yeah. To give somebody a house. It's simple. It's simple. I don't want to leave mad today.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't want to leave mad today. I don't want to have to tell my young people that they have to consider even being jailed or fined for not having resources. It makes me sick to my stomach. It's not over, though. It's not over. It will never be over. That's right. That's right. So thank you so much, and continue this fight. Thank you so, so much.
Marcella talked about hope. What gives me hope is that it looks like about 700 people from all across the country came here. We have buses from New York, from Philly, from Baltimore, Delaware, PG County, North Carolina, Indiana, Tennessee, Texas, Kentucky, people from across Texas. People from across the country came here to tell the Supreme Court, housing, not handcuffs. Let's keep this amazing energy going by welcoming Sherry Honkala, founder of the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign.
Come up here. All right. So, my name actually is Reverend Sherry Honkala. I might do street ministry for the last 40 years. I'm here today not to speak about anybody. I'm here today to speak about myself. As a young girl who grew up in foster care, I longed for housing. As a mother who is a foster mom, the young people that live in my house continue to long for housing. When I was homeless, I lived in a car, and each and every night, I worried that my son, Mark, and myself would freeze to death at night. We didn't know if we'd have enough gas to keep the car warm. When we lived in Minnesota, I didn't know if I was gonna die. And that's what continues to drive my passion to this day. There's a lot of people in the anti-poverty work and the nonprofit industrial complex and in shelters too that continue to make money off the backs of poor and homeless people's misery.
Let's go. Say it. Say the truth. Talk about it.
And 2 years ago, my son's father, with AIDS, 18 years of chronic homelessness, trying to find services in Philadelphia, died of a fentanyl overdose. Now, did he die from a fentanyl overdose, or did he die because he was denied services?
Denied services.
In our rich country, we have more abandoned houses than we have homeless people. And I see some of the brothers and sisters across this area here that I met because we traveled and helped you set up tent cities. We helped teach you how to take over abandoned houses. And we know what it's like to be out there on the lawn wondering if the Department of Human Services is going to snatch our babies only because we don't have a place to live or be homeless with our children. This is going to end. Because we that live on the bottom, we're going to get organized and we're going to go for the top. And stop all this stuff about this person is more homeless than this person. Damn it, we're on the Titanic and it's going down. With artificial intelligence.
Say it again. Come on.
We are creating the permanently unemployed in this country. So you might not be so close to the street today, but you might be tomorrow. So while you're in there making decisions that impact the majority of people's lives, damn it, you better think about that too. So that's why it's important for me to say that we will also not be pitted against our brothers and sisters who are homeless because of this government and our military spending. Our brothers and sisters in Palestine, in Haiti, in Brazil, in Venezuela, you name it, around the entire world. And our immigrant brothers and sisters that are filling the streets of this country today. There's enough to go around for everybody. So we who have had some of our encampments. Here's one of the women who gave birth on one of our encampments. It was front page of the New York Times. We will never leave peacefully.
That's right. Yeah.
And if they lock one of us up, they're going to have to lock us up. Resistance is a human right. And just like I think you've heard Reverend Theo Harris say it when she was an intern of ours, when we took over the St. Edward's Church and we moved 70 families in,
70.
We're ready. If they say that they're going to lock us up on the street, damn it, we're heading for every abandoned church across this country.
Let's go.
And we are headed for every abandoned house. We will house the people if they don't. So join us on opening day of not just the Republican National Convention, but also the Democratic Convention.
Yes. All right. Uh-oh, y'all.
And we will hold the court. We will tell the real story. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, if you're committing crimes against humanity. And then we will issue citizens arrests. So join us on those marches, opening day of the Republican and the Democratic conventions. We will be joined by homeless people across this entire country. We are tired of begging. We aren't going to beg anymore. Feeding, clothing, and housing me and my children is not up for negotiations. So join me and my reverend here, Pastor Collins, in saying resistance is a human right. 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 God bless each and every one of you. Join the Poor People's Army today, and we will take this country back. Thank you.
Hey, straight out of Philly. Straight out of Philly. Straight out of woman named Sherry.
That's right. We came in from Philadelphia. I'm part of an agency called CART, where we're helping the homeless in centers.
I'll be going off with
I want to talk about Kentucky. A few weeks ago, Kentucky passed a law that not only turned the entire state into a no camping zone, but also cut funding to end homelessness. But they did not stop there. This same law allows people to enact stand your ground provisions, to use force and even deadly force to remove homeless people from their property. That I write. This case could make it easier for cities and states to enact cruel and deadly laws just like Kentucky. And to help us understand the potential impacts of this case in the Deep South, please welcome Efrain Olivares, Director of the Strategic Litigation and Advocacy at the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Good morning, everybody. It's so humbling and inspiring to see so many of you here today. My name is Efrain Olivares. I'm Director of Strategic Litigation at the Southern Poverty Law Center. Every single person wants to have a roof over their head and a bed to sleep at night. And no one who has to sleep at a public park does so by choice. They do so because they have no alternative, no other choice. And arresting and ticketing them for doing that will do nothing to address the homelessness crisis we have in this country. Policies like the one Grants Pass has enacted create a crime out of being homeless. And people who have nowhere to sleep at night have no choice but violate this law simply by being who they are. In the American South, where I live and where my organization works, as we explained in our amicus brief to the court, these laws have their origin. Vagrancy laws from the 1800s that were used to target and control people of color, primarily black people and indigenous people in the South. And I don't need to tell you all that our nation has a dark history of punishing people of color for being poor.
That's right.
Even within the broader trend that we're seeing of using the criminal justice system to punish people for not having a place to sleep, even within that, what Grants Pass has done is extreme. It's the most extreme example. Instead of needlessly trying to put people in jail for being unhoused, we need our government at all levels, at the local level, state level, and federal level, to focus on housing. Only housing will end homelessness. Housing is a human right, it's a basic need, and affordable housing can end homelessness. People earning the minimum wage cannot afford housing in this country. More than half the population of our country spends more than 30% of their income on housing. And that forces them to make choices between housing or other basic necessities. What the court decides in this case will say a lot about the country that we are and the country that we aspire to be. And I know that the kind of country that I want to be and the kind of country that SPLC wants to be a part of is a country that does not arrest people simply for being poor. We can do better. We must do better. We demand a future without policies like the one in Grants Pass and policies that make housing a human right. Buenos días. Buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Efraín Olivares. Soy director de litigio en el Centro del Sur para la Pobreza. Toda persona tiene derecho a un hogar, a un techo y una cama donde dormir todas las noches. Y quien no lo tiene, no lo hace por elección, es porque no tiene ninguna alternativa. Tenemos una crisis en este país con millones de personas viviendo en situación de pobreza y cientos de miles sin un hogar. En los estados del sur en particular, estas leyes que criminalizan la pobreza tienen una historia de racismo y discriminación en contra de las comunidades afrodescendientes, indígenas y latinas. Lo que decida la Corte en este caso va a decir mucho de quiénes somos como país y quién queremos ser como país. Es un país donde castigamos a las personas únicamente por ser pobres y por no tener hogar, o es un país donde nos enfocamos en las soluciones y ofrecemos vivienda estable y vivienda costeable para todo mundo. ¡Sí se puede! 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 Muchas gracias.
Today we are making history. Hundreds of people have traveled here from across the country to tell the nine justices inside Congress and the White House that 72% of Americans support housing, not handcuffs. Please welcome Dr. Reverend Savina Martin, Chair of the National Clergy Council of the National Homelessness Union and original president of the 1986 chapter of the Boston Union of the Homeless, and Alex Webb, Managing Director of the Cairo Center, who will root today in history and justice.
Good morning, everyone. Morning.
Morning.
Friends. My name is Alex Webb, and I'm with the Cairo Center of Religions, Rights, and Social Justice, which comes out of a many decades-long history of poor people's organizing for housing, welfare, decent jobs, water, peace, and more. For 20 years, we have worked with grassroots and faith leaders, many of whom are here today, connected to these struggles of the poor. These roots have shaped our understanding of this moment we are living in, a moment of both crisis and opportunity. That's where our name comes from, kairos, a Greek word for exactly such a moment where God breaks into the world and movements are born. It is this long history of violence against the poor and poor-led organizing to save our very lives that anchors the moral analysis which we submitted in our amicus brief, with a dozen of other religious denominations, churches, and interfaith networks against the city of Grants Pass and in defense of the rights of Gloria Johnson and homeless and poor people everywhere. We are deeply concerned about the far-reaching consequences of this Supreme Court's decision, especially at a time when 40% of the country, and as Reverend Barber said this morning, 135 million poor people, are one emergency away from economic ruin. For tens of millions of us here in the United States, housing insecurity is alarmingly widespread and just a paycheck away. It is with heartbreak and outrage that I join you all today as we see this crisis grow and as we see the tendency to punish the poor gain traction, rather than the moral response, which is to care for, not punish, the poor, to fight poverty, not the poor, to provide housing and blankets, not handcuffs. I am honored to stand here this morning with Reverend Savina Martin, who I first met more than 25 years ago through the National Union of the Homeless organizing drives taking place across this country and being led by the poor. Today, the National Union of the Homeless Clergy Council was one of the first signatories on our brief. And I'll now turn this over to Reverend Martin.
We have 5 main slogans, but I'm going to start off with this one. We want jobs and homes, not death in the street. We know that we're only one paycheck away from being homeless, but we have a right to shift the narrative, speak for ourselves, and think for ourselves. My name is Savina Martin, and over 38 years ago, I found myself homeless. I'm a United States veteran, a mother, a caregiver. I'm work with the Poverty Scholars Initiative out of the Cairo Center Welfare Rights Organization. Our state leaders are here standing beside me as we all stand together. I'm on the Clergy Council of the National Union of the Homeless and also work in Massachusetts as a tri-chair with the Massachusetts Poor People's Campaign. And we are here to take back what's ours as we organize. I'm going to use some broad strokes here and go over some history. Over the years, my lifelong ministry of the poor, organizing the poor, has brought us here today. In 1986, over 450 homeless people marched from New York City Tompkins Square Park here in Washington, D.C. Along the route were 2 heart attacks and 3 miscarriages. But homeless people came together and showed our power. For 3 days, we stayed on the Anacostia River in back of the RFK Stadium, a ground that never dries, while the landmarkers and all the fancy movie stars were up at the Hilton eating caviar and having champagne. But when we hit the streets and came out of the shelters and marched here in D.C., we stood and demanded that we could speak for ourselves, and we did. Presente to our leaders, Lon Casanova and Leona Smith, who had the charge, and presente to our leader, Chris Sproul, and all the other leaders in this country who fought to end poverty that are here today. We resurrected in 2019. The National Union of the Homeless is here today from Illinois. We're here from Indiana. We're here from Washington, D.C. We are here from Philly, call it out. We are here from the Western region of Maryland. We are here. And we have National Union of the Homeless growing in California, San Jose, Sacramento, below the belt here in Washington, D.C., in Georgia and Alabama. So we are here and we're not going anywhere. As our Reverend Liz Theo Harris said, who we met when we were 18. Now let me tell you what one of the speakers said. There is a long lineage here of us, right? There's a long lineage of us that said, in the richest country in the world, we are no longer, we should not have to sleep in the subway stations, on the grates to stay warm, build encampments, sleep in the subways, sleeping in cars with our children. We shouldn't have to do that in the midst of abundance. This system needs to get itself together. As we get ourselves together, understanding what we are up against in this country. As a clergy and person of faith, homelessness is a sin against God. It is a sin of the highest order. And as our late union leader, Ron Casanova, said, he said he'd rather die fighting to end poverty and homelessness, not just die from homelessness. That is our mission today. That is all of our mission, to create a new human being, because whether we are homeless or one emergency away from homelessness, we want jobs and health care, not death in the streets. We want housing, not handcuffs. We are here to show the Supreme Court and the rest of the nation that we are not alone, and we are here to fight poverty, not the poor.
Thanks, y'all. Thank you. Up next, we have India and Lindsay from Open Table Nashville.
Y'all, we gotta finish this strong. So we're gonna do one more chant before we start. We lost Howard, he probably went to smoke, but this is his favorite chant. And we all know that we need not service, but solidarity. And we are the people, so we're gonna finish this off with one more chant. Ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people can't stop. Say what? All right. Ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people can't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people can't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people can't stop. Woo! Y'all, it is an honor to be standing and chanting in solidarity with all of you today. We are with Open Table Nashville, an interfaith homeless outreach and advocacy nonprofit who believes in solidarity. And we believe with every fiber of our being that housing is a human right, as so many have said here today.
We came here today all the way from Tennessee because we're tired of spending all our time fighting for basic necessities like housing, healthcare, and shelter. We're tired of spending all our time in courtrooms fighting unjust citations and arrests, when instead we could be helping people get off the streets and into housing.
We came here because there's an affordable housing crisis in our nation where half of us cannot afford the rent. We came here because we're bearing our friends, our siblings, our sisters, our brothers, while they're on waiting lists for affordable housing. We're carrying them with us today.
We came here because it's now a felony to sleep or camp on all public and state property across Tennessee. A felony, that's right. Harshest anti-camping law in our country right now. And we came here today because this court case will decide if states like ours can uphold such unjust laws and cite and arrest people for participating in life-sustaining activities, like sleeping with a blanket or pillow.
We came here to urge the Supreme Court to listen to our collective voices declaring that mass homelessness in this country is a systemic issue, not just an individual choice, and that punishing people who have nowhere to lay their heads is deeply cruel and unjust. We are here to urge them to act.
And we came here today to stand in solidarity with
the mother and her 4 children who were found living outside in a box in Wilson County, Tennessee. Our friend Rod, who was denied by 13 apartment complexes for 14-year-old charges before he was finally approved to move into his housing.
We came in solidarity with our friend Terry, who first lost his housing in a tornado and then his job in the pandemic. He was forced to stay beneath a bridge with his adult daughter because there was no shelter that would take them together.
We came in solidarity with our friend Alabama, who was arrested for petty charges 198 times, so often that I could not find him for his housing appointments, and I made him a t-shirt that read, "Please do not arrest me," across the front. My outreach worker is working for my housing on the back.
We came here in solidarity with our friend Joni, who was arrested under our statewide anti-camping ban, and Kyle, the public defender, who actually had to work to get this charge dismissed. Yes, public defenders out there, woo! I have a copy of Joni's citation printed here today, and the crime that Joni was charged with read, she was observed sleeping in Riverfront Park in a sleeping bag with all of her belongings around her. This is what we've made a crime in our country.
Shame. Shame. For too long, our nation has gutted funding for affordable housing and thrown our tax dollars to policing and prisons. We work for the day when all handcuffs are welded into house keys and all jails are empty and homes are full.
We work for a world where everyone not only has access to safe, dignified, affordable housing, but also can thrive. We know that our liberation is bound up with the liberation of our friends on the streets and all those who are being crushed by systems that put profit over people. We work for collective liberation and know that together, another world is possible. Thank y'all.
All right, we're almost done. I promise. The case is running over, but we're gonna wrap up. But I want to send a few thanks to the folks who are inside right now. There's too many to start. Where to even start? None of us would be here today without Deborah Blake, Gloria Johnson, and John Logan, the three plaintiffs behind this case who had the courage and bravery to fight against the injustices they were facing. Yes. And by their side the entire time, including right now, is a man named Ed Johnson, lead counsel and director of litigation at the Oregon Law Center. Let's make some noise to show our appreciation to Ed, the other attorneys involved in this case, and especially for Deborah Blake, Gloria Johnson, and John Logan. To close us out, I'm proud to call up Antonia Fasanelli, Executive Director of the National Homelessness Law Center.
Let's give it up for Jesse Rabinowitz for putting together this amazing rally today. Thank you all. On behalf of everyone at the National Homelessness Law Center, thank you so much for being here today. If you were here at the DC rally, or if you are at one of the many rallies being held in solidarity around the country, thank you. We know you're there. We see you. Thank you for being in community. At the National Homelessness Law Center, we fight for the rights of every unhoused person, and we champion policies ensuring housing for all persons. It has been our honor to be involved in this case for many, many years. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for showing up today. I want to extend the gratitude to all the organizations who helped and co-sponsored this rally today. First, the National Coalition for the Homeless. Thank you. Thank you so, so much. Our friends at Open Table Nashville who just spoke. Thank you, Open Table Nashville. Away Home America. I know y'all are here. Away Home America. Thank you. The Cairo Center just spoke. Thank you, the Cairo Center. The National Coalition for Homeless Veterans. Thank you. Miriam's Kitchen, right here in DC. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Invisible people. Invisible people. Thank you. I see you, Mark. Thank you. The Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC, just spoke a little bit ago. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The National Alliance to End Homelessness, y'all over there, we know it. Thank you. Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund, thank you. The Bazelon Center for Mental Health Law, thank you. Community Solutions, I know y'all are here. CSH, the Corporation for Supportive Housing, thank you. Funders Together to End Homelessness, thank you. The Housing Narrative Lab, thank you. And the National Association for Rights Protection and Advocacy, thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all our sponsors, but really thank you to every single person here. You are part of this community that has stood with John Logan, Gloria Johnson, Deborah Blake, Helen Cruz, I know she's here, and the Oregon Law Center and the Oregon Justice Resource Center, who are inside listening to the arguments, which are going really well, by the way. It was our honor to stand up and work with them, and we stood up, and you stood up for the over 600 people in Grants Pass, Oregon that literally have nowhere to go and are being ticketed and fined because they have no shelter in Grants Pass. Thank you. Thank you for standing up and saying that this is an injustice that we will not stand for. You came to this historic day where the Supreme Court took its first case on homelessness in 40 years. You are here, and we thank you for that. And we showed the residents of Grants Pass, you are not alone. You are not alone.
Never, never.
Never. And most of America is actually with us. Nearly 3/4 of Americans say punishing people for sleeping outside won't solve homelessness. And what will? Housing! Housing! It's the only thing that will end this injustice of homelessness. And so we call on cities to stop. Stop justifying your bad policy choices on the backs of unhoused people. Stop punishing people who have done nothing wrong. And stop using the criminal system to hide the fact that you have been ignoring the need for housing in your community probably for decades. Stop it. Because we are coming. We're coming to your community to say that everyone deserves a home. We are coming to say that we want better for our neighbors. We want better for our seniors, for our siblings, for our friends, for our children, than a housing crisis without a solution. We are coming to tell you that it is housing that must be the priority. And with 2 out of every 3 Americans with a personal connection to housing instability, either experiencing it themselves or know someone close to them who has. That's where we are now, 2 out of 3 Americans. We are not alone in this fight. Most of America is actually in this fight with us. So thank you for being here. On behalf of everyone at the National Homelessness Law Center, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being a part of this movement. Today is just the beginning. Thank you so much.
We want to just make sure that As Antonio just said, this isn't the end, this is the beginning. But for today, we have some additional activities at the church on East Capitol. We have lunches. We're going to have a bit of a program and talk about next steps. So join us down at the Episcopal Church at 213 East Capitol. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Oh, miss, the church is right there. Then you go, then you go that way.
Okay, it's close.
So you go for the first, it's on second. You go here and it's on second. You see that one? Actually, you gotta go to second.